Hey cats, it's your midsole man, Adizero Bud here. I've got a shoe in today that many viewers are excited to hear my opinions on. It is the Adizero Evo SL from Adidas. I got lucky and managed to grab a pair of these when they appeared on the sportshoes.com website, though it does seem like they're completely sold out now. What do I make of this daily priced super trainer? Let's find out. Thanks for tuning in, people. It is always appreciated. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Do drop us a comment as well to help with the algorithm. Dankeschön. Before I review this one, I think my initial impression of it was that Adidas have tried to make like a super cushioned daily model, like a super trainer I suppose. Perhaps something similar to the Novablast 5, or even getting towards the Superblast 2, a supposed upgrade to their existing ADIZERO SL2. I think with that 130 quid price tag, it's a little cheaper than the Novablast, much cheaper than Nike's Pegasus Plus model. So is this one of the running shoes of the year? Well, I don't think it is on my initial impressions. I have about 262 grams here, or 9.2 ounces in my UK 11, US 11.5. It's full length lightstrike pro here, and it's coming in at around about 22 short A, pretty much like all the other lightstrike pro foams we've had in the past. I mean, you could say it appears a touch softer, but I think it's pretty much the same formula. There's about 12 centimeters of 4-foot width here in my pair, and about 9.2 centimeters in the heel, so it is slightly narrower back here. That is pretty much common across all of the Adizero models I've ever tested out on the channel. Now, my pair, I've got about 41 millimeters of heel stack, and I've got about 34 up front, so it's about a 7mm drop I make, approximately, pretty much in line with exactly what Adidas have got up on their website. This is a shoe I've bought with my own cash. Adidas never send me any shoes to review, and it's no different here. Let's start with the upper first. I guess you could say there's a slightly more race vibe about this one, though there's certainly a little bit more space around the forefoot and the toe box than in the SL2, so I don't think you need to half size up in this model. I think true to size is probably okay. I think that they've made this model because they think people aren't going to want to fork out the 450 quid for the Pro Evo 1, and this is kind of like a facsimile of that shoe in some ways. It's kind of like the Sony PlayStation 5 Standard Edition versus the Pro. Now, the laces here are super thin, they're really cheap. I can understand this is the super light model, so they're trying to reduce the amount of weight here on foot. So, what were we expecting really? There's a wee bit more padding in the heel. I wouldn't say it's excessive though by any stretch. So similar laces to the SL2, they're pretty much awful, very thin, and it just makes it difficult to get a good lockdown over the top of the foot. And the tongue length here is really short, so if you do like using a runner's knot, or you need to alleviate any heel slip, then just be prepared for those laces to cut into the top of your foot. The padding is very minimal and the tongue is short, so simple stuff to fix, but Adidas never seem to do it. It's just like an afterthought. The mesh around the forefoot of the shoe, certainly in the toe box, is similar to what we've had on the Takumi Sen 10. It's kind of like a simplified mesh really. Again, they're just trying to weight relieve stuff. One odd thing about the shoe, well, they've got the 3-stripe overlays here. It does mean that the upper sort of bunches a little bit around the medial side of the shoe, and again it just stops you getting a good lockdown. So it's aesthetics over actual functionality once again. Not sure why they opted for the softer like material here in the back of the heel. You're trying to weight relieve the shoe, well, just get rid of that. There's a couple of overlays around the heel just to provide a bit of structure. So it's not really a race upper for me. Touch more room than the SL2, perhaps a more true to size fit. There's slight reinforcement around the toe box area, but aside from that, it's very simple. Just ruined really by the fact that there's such a short tongue and very little padding, and the laces are pretty trash. I'll see if I can swap them out for something else. Did manage to get a good lockdown just using all of the eyelets up, but still it was teetering on the brink of cheese cutter stuff. I'll give it a 2.6 out of 3 for the upper, just a bit underwhelming so far. Midsole wise, we have a full length unit of Lightstrike Pro here, and it still needs some break-in miles as per all the other Lightstrike Pro shoes that I've tested out. Out the box, you just might feel a little bit underwhelmed, I suppose. They got absolutely covered in grit and grime on my first run, but the foam itself is pretty easy to clean, which is not the same as the upper. It's very tough to get rid of any of it out of there. This one, underfoot, seems to be more of a marathon to half marathon pace shoe for me. Not sure it's something I'd use for like a 10k or certainly a 5k. I wouldn't suggest it's all that bouncy straight off the bat. There's certainly a lot of squash and cushion there. You feel it in the heel. I think if you're landing mid to forefoot, you'll probably get a little bit more out of the shoe perhaps. And as the midsole takes a bit of a pounding, it starts to take on a slightly different feel. I don't think it's a shoe you need to sort of keep on the shelf and save back or anything. Just get out there and use it for what it is. I'd say it's not all that far off a slightly more cushioned Takumi Sen 10, but obviously without the energy rods. There is a thin plastic shank here which is just under the lasting board. You don't really feel it though. It's very much there just to provide some torsional rigidity. There's no real sort of pop or anything from it. It's a stabilizing element. The shoe felt good at marathon pace for me. Easier paces around about 8:30 to 8 minutes per mile. And then it felt pretty good somewhere up to about 10k, although I was only doing reps there. And I was kind of left feeling that I wish I'd taken out a plated shoe with me rather than this one for that. So as a sort of daily operator at some sort of lower range paces, I think it'll be fine. Just lacks that real toe off and sort of propulsive feel that a lot of people want from their super trainer. I'd say it's a certainly responsive sort of cushion. It gives back a little bit, though if you want out and out squash and softness, I think the Nova Blast 5 is a better bet straight out the box. Because of the lack of plate, the midsole does start to flex over time, so the amount of space that you've got in the front of the shoe might feel quite a bit more when you first put it on. After you get some miles into it, it just flexes and there's a slight curve and you'll have a little bit less than you had before. So yeah, true to size out the box. Over time though, it may be that you wish you'd gone up a half size, but that will be very much down to the runner. I can see this working as a good daily midsole, you know, for the average sort of training. Perhaps if you're doing some marathon training, you want something a little bit more fun for those medium distances, where you might be throwing in a few faster portions into the run. I think Lightstrike Pro is durable enough for that. I don't really feel that you'll be worried about using it on a more frequent basis. It's not going to like tear up or anything, and certainly this implementation of it isn't changing my mind. At very slow recovery efforts, it does feel a little bit clunky, but there is quite a lot of foam here, certainly in the heel of the shoe. It does spill off to the sides. Kind of reminds me a little bit, I suppose, of the very first ADIZERO Adios Pro, without any sort of cutouts or anything. They've kind of taken it straight back to that, but that was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago or something. Too much midsole here for me for like a 5k kind of race, even though it's quite light. But as an everyday trainer, after some break-in miles, I can see people enjoying this one. But there are softer midsoles out there if that's what you want. So I'll give it a 2.6 out of 3 for the midsole so far. Outsole wise, we have Continental rubber here in the mid to forefoot section. There is a little bit of texture to it and it felt fine on road and pavements, but I would suggest be very cautious if you're running on anything that's at all slippery. If there are leaves on the ground, if you are going through some muddy sections, it's Slip City and it's no match for the waffle lugs that we get on something like the Zoomfly 6 or the Pegasus models. I had to slow down a few times and go down through the gears because it's just providing very little grip on anything smooth. It's an odd choice really when you consider it's winter time right now, trying to sell the shoes and build up the hype. Grip is paramount, and of course this colorway is just useless when you're considering using it in winter weather. Now I know it's a super light model and we're not going to be expecting loads and loads of rubber here, but you can at least provide something that has some ridges to provide a little bit of grip. So definitely not the best performer in terms of traction in wet weather. Be careful out there people if you do pick up a pair. Durability on Continental rubber is normally pretty good, so I can't see that being much of a problem. It's pretty much the Adios Pro 3 outsole really, minus some of the cutaways from the foam and that plastic piece that they positioned back in the heel on that model. If you're running in dry weather in that type of climate, I think this one could be a real banger, but it's certainly not my favourite whatsoever for my current seasonal selections. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for the outsole so far. I just had to slow down, and that's not fun, is it? Value wise, I guess this one at 130 quid, well, it's not bad, I suppose, if you can actually buy it and find it somewhere. This whole draw business with the Adidas website for both the male and female versions of the shoe, it's just ridiculous really. This isn't a shoe that's worthy of being in some sort of drawer. Just put it out there, Adidas, so people can buy it if they want to. Decent trainer with lots of stack here and potential versatility on a daily use, but I had glue marks all over the outsole on my pair, and the lace choice is just cheap. It's not of the quality I would expect from a 100 quid shoe, let alone one that's 130. The insole is very thin, it's not really doing an awful lot, and the text on mine is starting to wear off already after a couple of runs. The mesh hangs on to grit and grime, so it's difficult to clean, and if you like using a runner's knot, then just be ready for a cheese cutter like experience right up at the final eyelets. I bought these from Sport Shoes, £129.99, no discounts. Adidas have not sent me these shoes, and I feel somewhat underwhelmed, I suppose, from a daily perspective. I feel it's being sold on the midsole tech, and let's not forget that that's been around for several years. There's no sort of rods or anything here. Yeah, it might look like a nice shoe, but we're talking running shoes here, and does it perform? Yeah, it's okay, but I think the ADIZERO SL2 is actually a better pickup, considering you can get those at half the price of this right now. Is it up to the Superblast 2 sort of standard? Well, no, not really. That shoe feels much more cushioned, perhaps less bouncy, I suppose, but the grip is far superior, and the lockdown, well, there's no contest. So I'm yet to be convinced by this one whatsoever. I think if the 3-stripe brand had just put it out without all this draw business, I think it probably would be perceived in a slightly better light. And don't get me wrong, it's a very nice underfoot feel. There's lots of cushion there, but there's loads of other models that do the same. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for value so far. So there's a reasonable 10.2 out of 12 so far for the Adidas Adizero Evo SL. Did you pick up a pair of these on release? How are you finding them so far? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Very quick musical interlude for you. It's a Christmas one once again. I was really upset to hear that the Darkness had re-recorded their Christmas track. Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End, an absolute classic. Didn't really need re-recording. Maybe there's some contractual thing or something that's meant they've had to do a new version, but for me the original will always be the best. The thunderous drums, the fantastic harmonised electric guitar parts really do make it very special. The new one just didn't quite hit the spot. It didn't have the same sort of brutal feel, and the production all round just wasn't quite as sort of lavish, I suppose. Maybe it's me thinking about it from a sentimental perspective, but original for me is always the best. I love the ELO style vocoder voices later, and of course the children's choir, which is obligatory for a classic rockin' Christmas tune. So go and check it out. The original version of Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End by The Darkness. That is the true GOAT. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed today's review. Hope I'm not being too salty about that shoe. I'm just a little bit underwhelmed. Maybe I'll warm up to it as Christmas comes around. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with the algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you